The Art of War is the greatest book on strategy of all time. It has inspired Napoleon, Machiavelli, Mao Zedong, and many more historical figures. This 2,500-year-old book is one of the most important classical Chinese texts. Despite the passage of time, none of its maxims have become outdated, nor is there a single piece of advice that is not useful today. Yet the work of General Sun Tzu is not solely a book of military practice. It is a treatise that teaches the supreme strategy of wisely applying knowledge of human nature in moments of confrontation. It is not, therefore, a book about war. It is a work for understanding the roots of conflict and seeking a solution. The best victory is to conquer without fighting, Sun Tzu tells us. And that is the distinction between the prudent man and the ignorant. There are 13 fundamental chapters in this work. First, on assessment. Second, on the initiation of actions. Third, on propositions of victory and defeat. Fourth, on measure in the disposition of means. Fifth, on firmness. Sixth, on the full and the empty. Seventh, on direct and indirect confrontation. 8, on the 9 changes. 9th, on the distribution of means. 10th, on topology. 11th, on the kinds of terrain. 12th, on the art of attacking with fire. 13th, on concord and discord. Introduction. Sun Tzu was a Chinese general who lived around the 5th century before Christ. The collection of essays on the art of war attributed to Sun Tzu is the oldest known treatise on the subject. Despite its antiquity, Sun Tzu's advice remains completely valid. The Art of War is the greatest book on strategy of all time. It has inspired Napoleon, Machiavelli, Mao Zedong, and many more historical figures. This 2,500-year-old book is one of the most important classical Chinese texts. Despite the passage of time, none of its maxims have become outdated, nor is there a single piece of advice that is not useful today. Yet the work of General Sun Tzu is not solely a book of military practice. It is a treatise that teaches the supreme strategy of wisely applying knowledge of human nature in moments of confrontation. It is not, therefore, a book about war. It is a work for understanding the roots of conflict and seeking a solution. The best victory is to conquer without fighting, Sun Tzu tells us. And that is the distinction between the prudent man and the ignorant. Sun Tzu's work first arrived in Europe in the period preceding the French Revolution, in the form of a brief translation by the Jesuit priest Jean-Joseph Maria Miot. In the various translations that have been made since then, the author is occasionally named as Sun Wu or Sun Tzu. The core of Sun Tzu's philosophy on war rests on these two principles. All warfare is based on deception. The supreme art of war is to subdue the enemy without fighting. Sun Tzu's ideas spread through the rest of Asia, eventually reaching Japan. The Japanese quickly adopted these teachings and possibly added some of their own. There is evidence that the main Japanese book on the subject, the Book of Five Rings, is influenced by Sun Tzu's philosophy, as its author Miyamoto Musashi studied the treatise of the art of war during his training as a samurai. Eastern cultures are commonly referred to as cultures of strategy, and Sun Tzu's influence on this cultural development is by no means small. Today, the philosophy of the art of war has gone beyond strictly military limits, being applied to business, sports, diplomacy, and even personal behavior. For example, many key phrases in modern business management manuals are practically literal quotes from Sun Tzu's work, simply changing, for instance, army to company or weapons to resources. Without going any further, the ideas remain completely valid despite the 25 centuries that have passed since they were written. Chapter 1. On assessment, Sun Tzu says, "War is of vital importance to the state. It is the domain of life or death, the road to survival or ruin. It must be handled with the utmost care. To fail to reflect seriously on everything that concerns it is to show a culpable indifference to the preservation or loss of what is dearest to us. And this must not happen among us. It must be assessed in terms of 5 fundamental factors, comparing the various conditions of the rival sides to determine the outcome of the war. The first of these factors is doctrine. The second is time. The third is terrain. The fourth is command, and the fifth is discipline. Doctrine. Doctrine means that which causes the people to be in harmony with their ruler, so that they will follow him anywhere, fearing neither for their lives nor any danger. Time. Time means the yin and the yang, night and day, cold and heat, clear or rainy days, and the change of seasons. Terrain. Terrain implies distances and refers to where travel is easy or difficult, and whether it is open country or narrow passes, which influences the chances of survival. Command. Command must have the qualities of wisdom, sincerity, benevolence, courage, and discipline. Discipline. Discipline must be understood as the organization of the army, the ranks and gradations among the officers, the regulation of supply routes, and the provision of military materials to the army. These 5 fundamental factors must be known by every general. He who masters them conquers. He who does not is defeated. Therefore, when drawing up plans, the following 7 factors must be compared, evaluating each with the greatest care. Which ruler is wiser and more capable? Which commander possesses the greatest talent? Which army obtains advantages from nature and the terrain? In which army are regulations and instructions better observed? Which troops are stronger? Which army has better trained officers and troops? Which army administers rewards and punishments more justly? By studying these 7 factors, I will be able to foresee which of the 2 sides will emerge victorious and which will be defeated. The general who follows my advice is sure to win. That general must be kept in command. He who ignores my advice will certainly be defeated. That one must be dismissed. After paying attention to my advice and plans, the general must create a situation that contributes to their execution. By situation I mean that he must take into consideration the reality of the field and act in accordance with what is advantageous. All warfare is based on deception. Therefore, when capable of attacking, one must feign incapacity. When active, feign inactivity. If close to the enemy, make him believe you are far away. If far away, make him believe you are close. Hold out baits to entice the enemy. Strike the enemy when he is in disorder. Prepare against him when he is secure in all quarters. Avoid him for a time when he is stronger. If your opponent is of a choleric temperament, try to irritate him. If he is arrogant, try to encourage his egotism. If the enemy troops are well prepared after a reorganization, try to throw them into disorder. If they are united, sow dissension among their ranks. Attack the enemy when he is unprepared, and appear where you are not expected. These are the keys to victory for the strategist. Now, if the estimates made before the battle indicate victory, it is because carefully made calculations show that your conditions are more favorable than those of the enemy. If they indicate defeat, it is because they show that the favorable conditions for battle are fewer. With a careful evaluation, one can win. Without it, one cannot. How much fewer chances of victory will he have who makes no calculations at all? Through this method, we can examine the situation, and the outcome appears clearly. Chapter 2. On the initiation of actions. Once the battle has begun, even if you are winning, continuing for too long will dishearten your troops and blunt your sword. If you are besieging a city, you will exhaust your strength. If you keep your army in the campaign for a long time, your supplies will run out. Weapons are instruments of bad luck. Using them for too long will produce calamities. As it has been said, those who live by the sword die by the sword. When your troops are disheartened, your sword blunted, your strength exhausted, and your supplies scarce, even your own people will take advantage of your weakness to rebel. Then, even if you have wise advisors, in the end you will not be able to make things turn out well. For this reason, I have heard of military operations that were clumsy and sudden, but I have never seen any expert in the art of war keep a campaign going for a long time. It is never beneficial for a country to let a military operation drag on. As is commonly said, be swift as the thunder that rolls before you have been able to cover your ears. Swift as the lightning that flashes before you have been able to blink. Therefore, those who are not fully aware of the disadvantages of employing weapons cannot be fully aware of the advantages of using them. Those who use military means with skill do not mobilize their troops twice, nor do they provide food on 3 occasions for the same objective. This means that one must not mobilize the people more than once per campaign, and that immediately after achieving victory, one should not return to one's own country to carry out a second mobilization. At first, this means providing food for your own troops, but later, you take food from the enemy. If you take your supply of weapons from your own country, but take food from the enemy, you can be well supplied with both weaponry and provisions. When a country becomes impoverished because of military operations, it is due to transporting provisions from a distant place. If they transport them from a distant place, the people will grow poor. Those who live near where the army is located can sell their crops at high prices, but this ends the well-being of the majority of the population. When provisions are transported very far, the people are ruined because of the high cost. In markets near the army, the prices of goods rise. Therefore, long military campaigns are a blight on the country. When resources are exhausted, taxes are collected under pressure. When power and resources are spent, the country itself is ruined. The people are deprived of a large part of their budget, while government expenditures for armaments rise. The inhabitants constitute the foundation of a country. Food is the happiness of the people. The prince must respect this fact and be sober and austere in his public spending. Consequently, an intelligent general fights to deprive the enemy of his food. Every portion of food taken from the enemy is equivalent to 20 that you supply to yourself. Thus, what devastates the enemy is the recklessness and motivation of your own men in taking the benefits of the adversaries. When you reward your men with the benefits held by the adversaries, you will make them fight on their own initiative, and thus you can take the power and influence that the enemy had. This is why it is said that where there are great rewards, there are brave men. Consequently, in a chariot battle, reward first the one who takes at least 10 chariots. If you reward everyone, there will not be enough for all. So, offer a reward to one soldier to encourage all the others. Change their colors, use captured enemy soldiers mixed with your own. Treat the soldiers well and look after them. Captured soldiers must be well treated to ensure that in the future they fight for you. This is called defeating the adversary and, in addition, increasing your own strength. If you use the enemy to defeat the enemy, you will be powerful wherever you go. Thus, the most important thing in a military operation is victory and not persistence. The latter is not beneficial. An army is like fire. If you do not put it out, it will consume itself. Therefore, we know that he who is at the head of the army is in charge of the lives of the inhabitants and the security of the nation. Chapter 3, on propositions of victory and defeat. As a general rule, it is better to keep an enemy country intact than to destroy it. Capture their soldiers to conquer them and dominate their leaders. A general once said, "Practice the martial arts, calculate the strength of your adversaries, and cause them to lose their courage and direction, so that even though the enemy army is intact, it is useless." This is winning without violence. If you destroy the enemy army, kill its generals, assault its defenses by shooting, gather a crowd, and usurp their territory, all of this is winning by force. Because of this, those who win every battle are not truly professionals. Those who make the enemy armies surrender helplessly without fighting are the best masters of the art of war. Superior warriors attack, while the enemies are projecting their plans. Then they break up their alliances. That is why a great emperor said, "He who fights for victory in front of naked swords is not a good general." The worst tactic is to attack a city. Besieging and cornering a city is only carried out as a last resort. Employ no less than 3 months to prepare your devices, and another 3 to coordinate the resources for your siege. One must never attack out of anger and with haste. It is advisable to take time in the planning and coordination of the plan. Therefore, a true master of the martial arts defeats other enemy forces without battle, conquers other cities without besieging them, and destroys other armies without spending much time. Your master expert in the martial arts ruins the plans of the enemies. spoils their relations and alliances, cuts off their supplies, or blocks their path. Winning by these tactics, without the need to fight. It is imperative to fight against all enemy factions to obtain a complete victory, so that your army does not remain garrisoned and the benefit is total. This is the law of strategic siege. Complete victory occurs when the army does not fight, the city is not besieged, destruction does not drag on for a long time, and in each case, the enemy is defeated by the use of strategy. Thus, the rule for utilizing force is as follows. If your forces are 10 times superior to those of the adversary, surround him. If they are 5 times superior, attack him. If they are 2 times superior, divide him. If your forces are equal in number, fight if you can. If your forces are inferior, keep yourself continually on guard, for the smallest mistake will bring you the worst consequences. Try to keep yourself sheltered and avoid as far as possible an open confrontation with him. The prudence and firmness of a small number of people can eventually wear down and dominate even numerous armies. This advice applies in cases where all factors are equivalent. If your forces are in order while theirs are immersed in chaos, if you and your forces are in high spirits and they are demoralized, then even if they are more numerous, you can enter into battle. If your soldiers, your forces, your strategy and your courage are less than those of your adversary, then you must retreat and find a way out. Consequently, if the smaller side is obstinate, it falls prisoner to the larger side. This means that if a small army does not make an adequate assessment of its power and dares to make an enemy of a great power, no matter how firm its defense, it will inevitably become conquered if it cannot be strong, but does not know how to be weak. You will be defeated. Generals are servants of the people. When their service is complete, the people are strong. When their service is defective, the people are weak. Thus, there are 3 ways in which a prince leads the army to disaster. When a prince, ignorant of the facts, orders his armies to advance or retreat when they should not do so. This is called hobbling the army. When a prince is ignorant of military affairs, but shares equal command of the army. The soldiers end up confused when the prince is ignorant of how to carry out military maneuvers but shares equally in their direction. The soldiers are hesitant. Once the armies are confused and hesitant, trouble starts coming from the adversaries. This is called losing victory by disrupting the military aspect. If you try to use the methods of a civil government to direct a military operation, the operation will be confused. Those who know when to fight and when not to fight will triumph. They know how to discern when to use many or few troops. They have troops whose upper and lower ranks share the same objective. They face unprepared enemies with preparation. They have competent generals who are not limited by their civil governments. These 5 are the ways to know the future victor. To speak of the prince being the one who gives the orders in everything is like a general asking the prince for permission to put out a fire. By the time he is authorized, nothing is left but ashes. If you know others and know yourself, you will not be imperiled in 100 battles. If you do not know others but know yourself, you will lose 1 battle and win another. If you do not know others and do not know yourself, you will be imperiled in every battle. Chapter 4. On measure in the disposition of means. In ancient times, expert warriors made themselves invincible first, and then they waited to discover the vulnerability of their adversaries. Making yourself invincible means knowing yourself. Waiting to discover the vulnerability of the adversary means knowing others. Invincibility lies within oneself. Vulnerability lies in the adversary. Because of this, expert warriors can be invincible, but they cannot make their adversaries vulnerable. If the adversaries have no battle order from which to gather information, nor negligence or mistakes to take advantage of, how can you defeat them even if they are well equipped? This is why it is said that victory can be perceived, but not manufactured. Invincibility is a matter of defense. Vulnerability is a matter of attack. As long as you have not observed vulnerabilities in the adversary's battle order, conceal your own attack formation and prepare to be invincible for the purpose of preserving yourself. When the adversaries have vulnerable battle orders, that is the moment to go out and attack them. Defense is for times of scarcity. Attack is for times of abundance. Those expert in defense hide in the depths of the earth. Those expert in attack maneuvers hide in the highest heights of heaven. In this way, they can protect themselves and achieve total victory. In defensive situations, quiet the voices and erase the tracks, hidden like ghosts and spirits underground, invisible to everyone. In offensive situations, your movement is swift and your cry dazzling, fast as thunder and lightning, against which one cannot prepare, even if they come from heaven. Foreseeing victory when anyone can know it does not constitute true skill. Everyone praises a victory won in battle, but that victory is not actually so good. Everyone praises victory in battle, but what is truly desirable is to be able to see the world of the subtle and realize the world of the hidden, to the point of being able to achieve victory where no form exists. It does not require great strength to lift a hair. It is not necessary to have sharp eyesight to see the sun and the moon. Nor does one need great hearing to listen to the roll of thunder. What everyone knows is not called wisdom. Victory over others obtained through battle is not considered a good victory. In ancient times, those who were known as good warriors won when it was easy to win. If you are only able to secure victory after facing an adversary in an armed conflict, that victory is a hard-fought victory. If you are able to see the subtle and realize the hidden, breaking through before the battle order is formed, the victory so obtained is an easy victory. Consequently, the victories of good warriors do not stand out for their intelligence or their bravery. Thus, the victories they win in battle are not due to luck. Their victories are not coincidences, but are due to having previously positioned themselves in a position to win with certainty, prevailing over those who have already lost beforehand. Great wisdom is not obvious. Great merit does not announce itself. When you are able to see the subtle, it is easy to win. What does this have to do with intelligence or bravery? When problems are resolved before they arise. Who calls this intelligence? When there are victories without battle, who speaks of bravery? Thus, good warriors take their position on ground where they cannot lose, and they do not overlook the conditions that make their adversary prone to defeat. Consequently, a victorious army wins first and enters into battle after, whereas a defeated army fights first and tries to obtain victory after. This is the difference between those who possess a strategy and those who have no premeditated plans. Those who use weapons well cultivate the way and observe its laws. Thus, they are able to govern by prevailing over the corrupt, to use harmony to dissolve opposition, to never attack an innocent army, to take no prisoners and seize no spoil wherever the army passes, to refrain from cutting down trees or contaminating wells, to clean and purify the temples in the cities and mountains along your path, and to avoid repeating the errors of a decaying civilization. All of this is called the way and its laws. When the army is strictly disciplined to the point where soldiers would sooner die than disobey orders, and when rewards and punishments merit trust and are well established, when the leaders and officers are capable of acting in this manner, they can conquer a corrupt enemy prince. The military rules are 5. First, measurement. Second, assessment. Third, calculation. Fourth, comparison. Fifth, victory. The terrain gives rise to measurements. These give rise to assessments. Assessments lead to calculations. Calculations lead to comparisons. And comparisons give rise to victories. Through the comparison of dimensions, you can know where victory or defeat lies. Consequently, a victorious army is like a metric ton compared to a single gram, while a defeated army is like a gram compared to a kilogram. When a winner causes his people to go into battle as if he were directing a massive torrent of water down into a deep canyon, this is a matter of the order of battle. When water accumulates in a deep canyon, no one can measure its volume, just as our defense reveals no form. When the water is released, it plunges downward like a torrent, as irresistible as our own attack. Chapter 5. On firmness. Force is energy accumulated or perceived, and this is highly changeable. Experts are capable of conquering the enemy by creating a favorable perception in them thereby obtaining victory without the need to exert their physical force. Governing many people as though they were few is a matter of dividing them into groups. This is organization. Battling against a great number of troops as though they were few is a matter of demonstrating force through symbols and signals. This refers to achieving a perception of strength and power in the opposition on the battlefield, using the formations and flags deployed to position troops and coordinate their movements. Ensuring the army is capable of fighting against the adversary without being defeated is a matter of employing both orthodox and unorthodox methods. Orthodoxy and unorthodoxy are not fixed. Instead, they are used in a continuous cycle. An emperor, who was a famous warrior and administrator, spoke of manipulating the adversary's perceptions of what is orthodox and unorthodox, and then attacking unexpectedly by combining both methods until they merge into one, thereby becoming undefinable to the enemy. Making the effect of your forces like stones thrown against eggs is a matter of the full and the empty. When you induce your adversaries to attack you in your own territory, their force is always empty, placed at a disadvantage. As long as you do not compete in what they do best, your force will always be full. Attacking the empty with the full is like throwing stones against eggs. They are sure to break. When a battle is joined directly, victory is won by surprise. The direct attack is orthodox. The indirect attack is unorthodox. There are only two classes of attack in battle: the extraordinary surprise attack and the ordinary direct attack. Yet their variations are innumerable. The orthodox and the unorthodox give rise to one another reciprocally, like a circle with no beginning or end. Who could ever exhaust them? When the speed of flowing water reaches the point where it can move boulders, this is direct force. When the speed and maneuverability of a hawk are such that it can strike and kill, this is precision. The same is true of expert warriors. Their force is rapid, their precision true. Their force is like releasing a catapult. Their precision is hitting the intended target to cause the expected effect. Disorder comes from order. Cowardice arises from courage. Weakness grows from strength. If you want to feign disorder to convince and distract your adversaries, you must first organize perfect order, because only then can you create an artificial disorder. If you want to feign cowardice to learn the strategy of your adversaries, you must first be extremely brave, because only then can you act timid in an artificial way. If you want to feign weakness to induce arrogance in your enemies, you must first be extremely strong, because only then can you pretend to be weak. Order and disorder are a matter of organization. Cowardice and courage are a matter of momentum. Strength and weakness are a matter of battle formation. When an army has the force of momentum in perfection, even the timid become brave. When it loses the force of momentum, even the brave become timid. Nothing is fixed in the laws of war. They develop on the basis of momentum. With cunning, one can anticipate and ensure that the adversaries convince themselves of how to proceed and move, helping them walk along the path laid out for them. Move the enemy with the prospect of triumph so that they fall into your ambush. Good warriors seek effectiveness in battle from the force of momentum and perception, and do not rely solely on the strength of their soldiers. They are capable of choosing the best people, deploying them appropriately, and letting the force of momentum achieve its objectives. When there is enthusiasm, conviction, order, organization, resources, and commitment from the soldiers, you possess the force of momentum, and the timid become courageous. Thus, it is possible to assign soldiers according to their capabilities and skills, entrusting them with appropriate duties and responsibilities. The brave can fight, the careful can act as sentinels, and the intelligent can study, analyze, and communicate. Each one is useful. Making soldiers fight by allowing the force of momentum to do its work is like rolling boulders. Boulders remain motionless when they are on flat ground, but they roll on an incline. They stay fixed when they are square, but they turn if they are round. Therefore, when men are led into battle with cunning, the momentum is like round boulders plunging down a mountain. This is the force that produces victory. Chapter 6. On the full and the empty. Those who anticipate, prepare, and arrive first at the battlefield to await the adversary are in a rested position. Those who arrive last at the battlefield, who must improvise and join the fight, are left exhausted. Good warriors make the adversaries come to them, and under no circumstances allow themselves to be lured away from their stronghold. If you make your adversaries come to you to fight, their force will always be empty. If you do not go out to fight, your force will always be full. This is the art of emptying others and filling yourself. What impels your adversaries to come toward you of their own choice is the prospect of gain. What discourages your adversaries from coming toward you is the probability of suffering harm. When adversaries are in a favorable position, tire them. When they are well fed, cut off their supplies. When they are resting, force them into motion. Attack unexpectedly, causing the adversaries to exhaust themselves running to save their lives. Disrupt their provisions, ravage their fields, and cut off their supply routes. Appear at critical places and attack where they least expect it, forcing them to rush to the rescue. Appear where they cannot go. Head where they least expect you, so you can travel hundreds of kilometers without fatigue. Cross uninhabited lands. Attacking an open space does not only mean a space in which the enemy has no defense. As long as their defense is not strict and the place is not well guarded, the enemies will scatter before you as if you were crossing uninhabited territory. To take infallibly what you attack, attack where there is no defense. To maintain an infallibly secure defense, defend where there is no attack. Thus, in the case of those who are experts in attack, their enemies do not know where to defend. In the case of those who are experts in defense, their enemies do not know where to attack. When instructions are followed, the people are sincerely loyal and committed. Let the plans and preparations for defense be firmly established, being so subtle and reserved that your strategies are revealed in no way, leaving the adversaries feeling insecure so that their intelligence is of no use to them. Be extremely subtle, discreet to the point of having no form. Be completely mysterious and confidential to the point of being silent. In this way, you can direct the destiny of your adversaries. To advance without encountering resistance, strike through their weak points, to retreat elusively, be faster than they are. Military situations seek speed, arrive like the wind, move like lightning, and your adversaries will not be able to defeat you. Therefore, when you want to enter into battle, even if the adversary is entrenched in a defensive position, he will not be able to avoid fighting if you attack the place where he must immediately come to the rescue. When you do not want to enter into battle, even if you draw a line on the ground you wish to keep, the adversary cannot fight with you because you give him a false scent. This means that when the adversaries arrive to attack you, you do not fight them. Instead, you establish a strategic shift to confuse them and fill them with uncertainty. Consequently, when you induce others to adopt a visible formation while you yourself remain formless, you are concentrated while your adversary is divided. Make the adversaries see as extraordinary what is ordinary to you, and make them see as ordinary what is extraordinary to you. This is inducing the enemy to adopt a formation. Once you see the adversary's formation, concentrate your troops against him. Because your formation is not visible, the adversary will surely divide his forces. When you are concentrated, forming a single force, while the enemy is divided into 10, you are attacking a concentration at odds of 10 against 1. Thus, your force is greatly superior to theirs. If you can attack a few soldiers with many, you will decimate the number of your adversaries. When you are heavily entrenched, having made yourself strong behind good barricades, and you let no information filter out about your forces, go out to gather precise information, then attack and conquer irresistibly. They must not know where you plan to fight the battle, because when the enemy does not know, he must deploy many guard posts. The moment numerous posts are established, you only have to fight against small units. Thus, when his vanguard is prepared, his rear is defective. When his rear is prepared, his vanguard presents weak points. Preparations on his right wing will mean a deficiency on his left wing. Preparations everywhere will mean being vulnerable everywhere. This means that when troops are on guard in many places, they are forcibly scattered into small units. He who has few soldiers is on the defensive against the adversary. He who has many forces the enemy to defend himself. The more defenses you induce your enemy to adopt, the more weakened he will be. Thus, if you know the place and the date of the battle, you can join it even if you are 1,000 kilometers away. If you do not know the place and the date of the battle, then your left flank cannot save your right. Your vanguard cannot save your rear, and your rear cannot save your vanguard, even in a territory of only a few dozen kilometers. If you have many more troops than others, how can this factor help you obtain victory if you do not know the place and the date of the battle? Even if your troops are more numerous than theirs, how can you know if you are going to win or lose? Therefore, it is said that victory can be created. If you ensure the adversaries do not know the place and date of the battle, you can always win, even if the enemies are numerous. They can be prevented from entering into combat. Therefore, make your assessment of them to find out their plans and determine which strategy can succeed and which cannot. Incite them to action to discover the general pattern of their movements and their rest. Do something for or against them to draw their attention, so that you can entice them and discover their behavioral habits in attack and defense. Induce them to adopt specific formations to know their weak points. This means utilizing many methods to confuse and disturb the enemy with the objective of observing how they respond to you. After observing them, act accordingly so that you may know what kind of situations mean life and which mean death. Test them to find out their strong points and their weak points. Therefore, the ultimate point in the formation of an army is to arrive at formlessness. When you have no form, spies cannot discover anything, as information cannot build a strategy against you. Once you have no perceptible form, you leave no tracks that can be followed. Spies find no crack to peer through, and those in charge of planning cannot establish any workable plan. Victory over multitudes through precise formations must remain unknown to the multitudes. Everyone knows the form by which the victor conquered, but no one knows the form by which he secured victory. Consequently, victory in war is not repetitive. Instead, it adapts its form continuously. Determining the appropriate changes means not repeating previous strategies to obtain victory. To achieve it, I can adapt from the very beginning to any formation the adversaries might adopt. Formations are like water. The nature of water is to avoid the high ground and flow downward. The nature of armies is to avoid the full and attack the empty. The flow of water is determined by the earth. Victory is determined by the adversary. Thus, an army has no constant formation, just as water has no constant shape. The ability to obtain victory by changing and adapting according to the enemy is called genius. Chapter 7. On direct and indirect confrontation. The ordinary rule for the use of the army is that the command of the army receives orders from the civil authorities, and then gathers and concentrates the troops, quartering them together. Nothing is more difficult than armed struggle. Fighting others face to face to gain advantages is the most arduous task in the world. The difficulty of armed struggle lies in making long distances near and turning problems into advantages. While giving the appearance of being very far away, you begin your march and arrive before the enemy. Therefore you make his route the rule, luring him with the hope of gain. When you set out on the march after us and arrive before them, you know the strategy of making long distances near. Employ a special unit to deceive the enemy, luring him into a false pursuit by making him believe the bulk of your forces is far away. Then you launch a surprise attack force that arrives first, even though it set out later. Consequently, armed struggle can be profitable and it can be dangerous. For the expert, it is profitable; for the inexperienced, dangerous. Mobilizing the entire army for combat for the sake of obtaining some advantage would take too much time. But fighting for an advantage with an incomplete army would result in a lack of resources. If you mobilize rapidly and without stopping day and night, traveling double the usual distance, and if you fight to obtain some advantage thousands of kilometers away, your military leaders will be taken prisoner. The soldiers who are strong will arrive there first, and the most tired will arrive later. As a general rule, only 1 out of 10 will succeed. When the route is long, the troops grow tired. If their strength has been spent on the march, they arrive exhausted while their adversaries are fresh. Thus, they are sure to be attacked. Fighting for an advantage 50 kilometers away will frustrate the plans of the command, and as a general rule, only half of the soldiers will do so. If you fight to obtain an advantage 30 kilometers away, only 2 out of 3 soldiers will cover the distance. Thus, an army perishes if it is not equipped, if it has no provisions, or if it has no money. These 3 things are necessary. You cannot fight to win with an unequipped army or without provisions, which money facilitates. Therefore, if you are ignorant of the plans of your rivals, you cannot form precise alliances. Unless you know the mountains and forests, the gorges and passes, and the condition of the marshes, you cannot maneuver with an armed force. Unless you use local guides, you cannot take advantage of the benefits of the terrain. Only when you know every detail of the condition of the terrain can you maneuver and wage war. Consequently, a military force is used according to the planned strategy. It is mobilized by the hope of reward and adapted through division and combination. A military force is established through strategy, in the sense that you distract the enemy so that he cannot know your real situation and cannot impose his supremacy. It is mobilized by the hope of reward, in the sense that it enters into action when it sees the possibility of obtaining an advantage. Dividing and recombining troops is done to confuse the adversary and observe how he reacts to you. In this way, you can adapt to obtain victory. Therefore, when a military force moves with speed, it is like the wind. When it goes slowly, it is like the forest. It is as ravenous as fire and as motionless as the mountains. It is swift as the wind in the sense that it arrives without warning and disappears like lightning. It is like a forest because it has order. It is as ravenous as fire that devastates a plain, leaving behind not even a blade of grass. It is as motionless as a mountain when it is quartered. It is as difficult to know as darkness. Its movement is like rolling thunder. To occupy a place, divide your troops. To expand your territory, divide the benefits. The general rule of military operations is to deprive the enemy of food as much as possible. However, in localities where the people do not have much, it is necessary to divide the troops into smaller groups so they can take what they need in various parts, as only then will they have enough. As for dividing the spoil, this means it is necessary to distribute it among the troops to keep what has been won, not letting the enemy recover it. Act after having made an estimate. He who knows first the measure of what is far and what is near wins. This is the general rule of armed struggle. The first to make the move is the guest. The last is the host. The guest has a difficult time. The host has an easy time. Near and far refer to travel. Fatigue, hunger, and cold arise from travel. An ancient book dealing with military matters says, "Words are not heard, which is why cymbals and drums are made. Flags and banners are made because of the absence of visibility." Cymbals, drums, flags, and banners are used to concentrate and unify the ears and eyes of the soldiers. Once they are unified, the brave cannot act alone, nor can the timid retreat alone. This is the general rule for employing a group. Unifying the ears and eyes of the soldiers means making them look and listen in unison, so they do not fall into confusion and disorder. Signals are used to indicate directions and prevent individuals from going wherever they please. Thus, in night battles, use fires and drums, and in day battles, employ flags and banners to manipulate the ears and eyes of the soldiers. Use many signals to confuse the perceptions of the enemy and make him fear your formidable military power. In this way, you make the energy of his armies disappear and demoralize his generals. First of all, you must be capable of remaining firm in your own heart. Only then can you demoralize the enemy generals. For this reason, tradition states that the inhabitants of other times possessed the firmness to demoralize, and the ancient law of those who drove war chariots said that when the original mind is firm, fresh energy is victorious. Thus, morning energy is full of ardor, midday energy decays, and evening energy retreats. Consequently, Experts in the handling of weapons prefer enthusiastic energy. They attack the decaying energy and those that are in retreat. They are the ones who dominate energy. Any weakling in the world is ready to fight in a minute if he feels encouraged. But when it actually comes to taking up arms and entering into battle, he is possessed by energy. When this energy vanishes, he will stop, grow afraid, and regret having started. The reason why that class of army looks down on strong enemies as if they were looking at virgin lands is because they are taking advantage of their aggressiveness, stimulated by any cause. Use order to face disorder. Use calmness to face those who are agitated. This is mastering the heart. Unless your heart is totally open and your mind in order, you cannot expect to be able to adapt to respond without limits, to handle events in an infallible manner, and to face grave and unexpected difficulties without being disturbed. Directing everything without confusion. Mastering strength is waiting for those who come from afar. Keeping yourself in total comfort for those who have grown weary, and waiting with a full stomach for the hungry. This is what is meant when speaking of drawing others to where you are, while avoiding being induced to go to where they are. Avoiding confrontation against well-ordered combat formations and not attacking great battalions constitutes the mastery of adaptation. Therefore, the general rule of military operations is not to face a great mountain nor oppose the enemy with your back to it. This means that if the adversaries are on high ground, you must not attack them uphill, and when they charge downhill, you must not confront them. Do not pursue enemies when they feign a retreat, nor attack expert troops. If the adversaries flee suddenly before spending their energy, there are surely ambushes waiting to attack your troops. In this case, you must hold back your officers so they do not launch into a pursuit. Do not consume the food of their soldiers. If the enemy suddenly abandons his provisions, these must be tested before being eaten, in case they are poisoned. Do not stop any army that is on its way back to its country. Under these circumstances, an adversary will fight to the death. You must leave an outlet for a surrounded army. Show them a way to save their lives so they are not willing to fight to the death, and thus you can take advantage to attack them. Do not press a desperate enemy. An exhausted animal will keep fighting, for that is the law of nature. These are the laws of military operations. Chapter 8, on the 9 changes generally. Military operations are under the control of the civil ruler. To direct the army, the general must not pitch his camp on difficult terrain. Let diplomatic relations be established at the borders. Do not remain in arid or isolated territory. When you find yourself in a closed terrain, prepare some strategy and move. When you find yourself in a deadly terrain, fight. Closed terrain means that there are steep places surrounding you on all sides, so that the enemy has mobility, able to come and go freely, but it is difficult for you to get out and return. Every route must be studied so that it is the best. There are routes you must not use, armies that must not be attacked, cities that must not be surrounded, terrains on which you must not fight, and orders from civil rulers that must not be obeyed. Consequently, generals who know the possible variables to take advantage of the terrain know how to handle armed forces. If the generals do not know, they know how to adapt advantageously. Even if they know the condition of the terrain, they cannot take advantage of it if they are in command of armies, but ignore the arts of total adaptability. Though they may know the objective to be achieved, they cannot make the soldiers fight for it. If you are able to adjust the campaign and change according to the momentum of the forces, then the advantage does not shift, and the only ones who are harmed are the enemies. For this reason, there is no permanent structure. If you can fully comprehend this principle, you can make the soldiers act in the best possible way. Therefore, the considerations of the intelligent person always include objectively analyzing both benefit and harm. When he considers the benefit, his action expands. When he considers the harm, his problems can be resolved. Benefit and harm are interdependent, and the wise take them both into account. Thus, what restrains adversaries is harm, what keeps them occupied is action, and what motivates them is benefit. Weary the enemy by keeping them occupied and leaving them no room to breathe. But before achieving this, you must first carry out your own work. That work consists of developing a strong army, a prosperous people, a harmonious society, and an orderly way of living. Consequently, the general rule of military operations is not to count on the enemy not coming, but to rely on having the means to face him. Not to count on the adversary not attacking, but to rely on possessing what cannot be attacked. If you can always remember danger when you are safe and chaos in times of order, remain attentive to danger and chaos while they have not yet taken form, and avoid them before they present themselves. This is the best strategy of all. For this reason, there are 5 traits that are dangerous in generals. Those who are ready to die can lose their lives. Those who want to preserve their lives can be taken prisoner. Those who are prone to irrational passions can be ridiculed. Those who are not highly principled can be dishonored. Those who are compassionate can be disturbed. If you appear in a place that the enemies will surely rush to defend, compassionate people will invariably hasten to rescue the inhabitants, causing themselves trouble and exhaustion. These are 5 traits that constitute defects in generals and are disastrous for military operations. Good generals are of another kind. They commit themselves unto death, but they do not cling to the hope of survival. They act according to events in a rational and realistic manner, without being carried away by emotions or subject to confusion. When they see a good opportunity, they are like tigers. Otherwise, they close their doors. Their action and inaction are matters of strategy, and they can neither be pleased nor angered. Chapter 9, on the distribution of means. Military maneuvers are the result of plans and strategies executed in the most advantageous manner to win. They determine the mobility and effectiveness of the troops. If you are going to place your army in a position to observe the enemy, cross mountains quickly and watch them from a valley. Consider the effect of the light and remain in the highest position of the valley. When you fight on a mountain, attack from the top down and not the other way around. Fight downhill and never uphill. Prevent water from dividing your forces. Get away from unfavorable conditions as soon as possible. Do not face enemies inside the water. It is convenient to let half of their troops pass, and at that moment divide and attack them. Do not position yourself downstream. Do not walk against the current or against the wind. If you camp on the bank of a river, your armies can be surprised at night, driven to drown, or poison can be placed in the stream. Your boats must not be moored downstream to prevent the enemy from taking advantage of the current by launching their boats against you. If you cross marshes, do so quickly. If you find yourself facing an army in the middle of a marsh, remain close to its aquatic plants or backed by the trees. On a plain, take positions from which it is easy to maneuver, keeping the elevations of the terrain behind and to your right, with the lowest parts in front and the highest behind. Generally, an army prefers high ground and avoids low ground. It appreciates light and detests darkness. Elevated terrains are stimulating, and therefore people feel comfortable on them. Furthermore, they are convenient for acquiring the force of momentum. Low terrains are damp, which causes disease and makes combat difficult. Take care of the physical health of your soldiers with the best resources available. When there is no disease in an army, it is said to be invincible. Where there are mounds and embankments, position yourself on their sunny side, keeping it always to your right and behind. Placing oneself in the best part of the terrain is advantageous for a military force. The advantage in a military operation consists of taking benefit of all favorable factors of the terrain. When it rains upstream and the current brings foam with it, if you want to cross, wait for it to clear. Whenever a terrain presents impassable ravines, closed places, traps, pitfalls, crevices, and natural prisons, you must abandon it quickly and not approach it. As far as I am concerned, I always keep away from these accidents of the terrain so that the adversaries are closer to them than I am. I face these accidents so that they remain behind the enemy. Then you are in an advantageous situation, and he has unfavorable conditions. When an army is moving, if it crosses mountainous territories with many streams of water and wells, or marshes covered with reeds or virgin forests full of trees and vegetation, it is essential to search them completely and with care. As those places assist ambushes and spies, It is essential to dismount and search the terrain in case there are hidden troops waiting to ambush you. There could also be spies on the watch, observing you and listening to your instructions and movements. When the enemy is near but remains calm, it means he is in a strong position. When he is far away but tries to provoke hostilities, he wants you to advance. If, furthermore, his position is accessible, this means it is favorable to him. If an adversary does not keep the position that is favorable to him by the conditions of the terrain and places himself in another convenient spot, it must be because there is some tactical advantage in doing so. If the trees move, the enemy is approaching. If there are obstacles among the bushes, you have taken a wrong path. The idea of putting many obstacles among the undergrowth is to make you think there are ambushes hidden in the midst of it. If birds take flight, there are troops in ambush in the area. If animals are frightened, there are attacking troops. If high and thick columns of dust rise, chariots are approaching. If they are low and wide, infantrymen are approaching. Scattered plumes of smoke mean that firewood is being cut. Small dust clouds going back and forth indicate that camp is being raised. If the enemy's emissaries speak humble words while he increases his war preparations, this means he is going to advance. When high-sounding words are spoken, and they advance ostentatiously, it is a sign that the enemy is going to retreat. If his emissaries come with humble words, send spies to observe the enemy, and you will find that he is increasing his war preparations. When light chariots come out first and position themselves on the flanks, they are establishing a battle front. If emissaries arrive asking for peace without signing a treaty, it means they are plotting some conspiracy. If the enemy quickly arranges his chariots in battle lines, he is waiting for reinforcements. They will not rush into an ordinary encounter unless they understand it will help them, or there must be a force at a distance that is expected at a certain moment to unite their troops and attack you. It is wise to anticipate and prepare immediately for this eventuality. If half of his troops advance and the other half retreat, the enemy plans to lure you into a trap. In this case, the enemy is feigning confusion and disorder to incite you to advance. If the enemy soldiers lean on one another, they are hungry. If the water carriers drink first, the troops are thirsty. If the enemy sees an advantage but does not seize it, he is tired. If birds gather in the enemy camp, the place is empty. If there are birds flying over a city, the army has fled. If night calls occur, the enemy soldiers are frightened. They are afraid and anxious, and that is why they call out to one another. If the army lacks discipline, this means the general is not taken seriously. If the banners move, the army is plunged into confusion. Signals are used to unify the group. Thus, if they move back and forth without order or concert, it means their ranks are confused. If his emissaries show irritation, it means they are tired. If they kill their horses for meat, the soldiers lack food. When they have no cooking pots and do not return to their camp, they are completely desperate enemies. If murmurings occur with a lack of discipline and the soldiers speak much among themselves, it means the loyalty of the troops has been lost. Murmurings describe the expression of true feelings. Lack of discipline indicates problems with superiors. When the command has lost the loyalty of the troops, the soldiers speak frankly to one another about the problems with their superiors. If numerous rewards are granted, the enemy is in a dead end. When too many punishments are ordered, the enemy is desperate. When the force of their momentum is exhausted, they grant constant rewards to keep the soldiers happy, preventing them from rebelling en masse. When the soldiers are so exhausted that they cannot fulfill orders, they are punished time and again to re-establish authority. To be violent at first, and then end up fearing your own soldiers is the height of ineptitude. Emissaries who arrive with a conciliatory attitude indicate that the enemy wants a truce. If the enemy troops face you with ardor but delay the moment of entering into combat without, however, leaving the ground, you must observe them carefully. They are preparing a surprise attack. In military matters, it is not necessarily more beneficial to be superior in forces. It is only necessary to avoid acting with unnecessary violence. It is sufficient to consolidate your power, make estimates about the enemy, and succeed in gathering troops. That is all. The enemy who acts in isolation, who lacks strategy, and who takes his adversaries lightly will inevitably end up defeated. If your plan does not contain a strategy of retreat following the attack, but you rely exclusively on the strength of your soldiers and take your adversaries lightly, without evaluating their condition, you will surely fall prisoner. If soldiers are punished before you have succeeded in making them loyal to the command, they will not obey, and if they do not obey, they will be difficult to employ. Neither can they be employed if no punishment is carried out, even after having obtained their loyalty. When there is an underlying feeling of appreciation and trust, and the hearts of the soldiers are already bound to the command. If discipline is relaxed, the soldiers will become arrogant, and it will be impossible to employ them. Therefore, direct them through the civilized art, and unify them through the martial arts. This means a continuous victory. The civilized art means humanity, and the martial arts mean regulations. Command them with humanity and benevolence. Unify them strictly and firmly. When benevolence and firmness are evident, it is possible to be sure of victory. When orders are given in a clear, simple, and consistent manner to the troops, they accept them. When orders are confused, contradictory, and changing, the troops do not accept them or do not understand them. When orders are reasonable and just, simple, clear, and consistent, there is mutual satisfaction between the leader and the group. Chapter 10 on Topology. Some terrains are easy, others difficult. Some neutral, others narrow, rugged, or open. When the terrain is accessible, be the first to establish your position, choosing the sunny heights, a position that is suitable for transporting supplies. Thus you will have an advantage when you wage battle. When you are in a terrain difficult to exit, you are limited. In such terrain, if your enemy is unprepared, you can win if you go forward. But if the enemy is prepared and you go forward, you will have great difficulty returning to it again, which will play against you. When it is a terrain unfavorable to both sides, it is said to be a neutral terrain. In a neutral terrain, even if the adversary offers you an advantage, do not take it. Retreat, inducing half of the enemy troops to come out, and then fall upon him, taking advantage of this favorable condition. In a narrow terrain, if you are the first to arrive, you must occupy it completely and await the adversary. If he arrives first, do not pursue him. If he blocks the passes, pursue him only if he does not block them. In rugged terrain, if you are the first to arrive, you must occupy its high, sunny points and await the adversary. If he has occupied them first, retreat and do not pursue him. In open terrain, the force of momentum is equalized, and it is difficult to provoke him to fight in a manner disadvantageous to him. Understanding these 6 classes of terrain is the principal responsibility of the general, and it is essential to consider them. These are the configurations of the terrain. Generals who ignore them are defeated. Thus, among the troops, there are those who flee, those who retreat, those who collapse, those who rebel, and those who are defeated. None of these circumstances constitute natural disasters, but are due to the errors of the generals. Troops that have the same momentum but attack in a proportion of 1 against 10 are defeated. Those who have strong troops, but whose officers are weak, are left held back. Those who have weak soldiers under the command of strong officers will find themselves in trouble. When superior officers are angered and violent, facing the enemy on their own and out of spite, and when the generals ignore their capabilities, the army will collapse. As a general rule, to be able to defeat the enemy, the entire military command must have a single intention, and all military forces must cooperate. When the generals are weak and lack authority, when orders are not clear, when officers and soldiers have no solidity, and formations are anarchic, revolt occurs. The generals who are defeated are those who are incapable of calibrating their adversaries, entering into combat with forces superior in number or better equipped, and failing to select their troops according to their levels of training. If you employ soldiers without selecting the prepared from the unprepared, the bold from the timid, you are seeking your own defeat. These are the 6 ways to be defeated. The comprehension of these situations is the supreme responsibility of the generals, and they must be considered. The first is failing to calibrate the number of forces. The second is the absence of a clear system of rewards and punishments. The third is insufficient training. The fourth is irrational passion. The fifth is the inefficacy of the law of order. The sixth is the failure to select strong and resolute soldiers. The configuration of the terrain can be a support for the army. For military leaders, the appropriate course of action is to calibrate the adversary to secure victory and to calculate risks and distances. Those who wage battles knowing these elements emerge victorious. Those who fight ignoring them are defeated. Therefore, when the laws of war indicate a sure victory, it is clearly appropriate to engage in battle, even if the government has given orders not to attack. If the laws of war do not indicate a sure victory, it is appropriate not to enter into battle, even if the government has given the order to attack. In this way, one advances without seeking glory and orders retreats without avoiding responsibility, with the sole purpose of protecting the population and also to the benefit of the government. Thus, a valuable service is rendered to the nation. Advancing and retreating against the orders of the government is not done for personal interest, but to safeguard the lives of the population and the true benefit of the government. Servants of that stature are highly useful to a people. Look after your soldiers as you look after a newborn. Thus they will be willing to follow you into the deepest valleys. Care for your soldiers as you care for your beloved children, and they will gladly die with you. But if you are so kind to them that you cannot use them, if you are so indulgent that you cannot give them orders, and so informal that you cannot discipline them, your soldiers will be like spoiled children, and therefore useless. Rewards must not be used, nor should a general rely solely on punishments. Otherwise, the troops, like spoiled children, become accustomed to enjoying things or being resentful of everything. This is harmful and makes them useless. If you know that your soldiers are capable of attacking, but do not know if the enemy is invulnerable to an attack, you have only half a chance of winning. If you know that your enemy is vulnerable to an attack, but do not know if your soldiers are capable of attacking, you have only half a chance of winning. If you know that the enemy is vulnerable to an attack and your soldiers can carry it out, but you do not know if the condition of the terrain is favorable for battle, you have only half a chance of winning. Therefore, those who know the martial arts best do not waste time when they make their moves, nor are they exhausted when they attack. Because of this, it is said that when you know yourself and you know others, victory is not in danger. When you know heaven and earth, victory is inexhaustible. Chapter 11, on the 9 classes of terrain. According to the laws of military operations, there are 9 classes of terrain. Dispersive terrain, if local interests fight one another in their own territory. When soldiers are attached to their homes and fight close to them, they can easily be dispersed. Light terrain, when you penetrate into foreign territory but do not do so deeply. This means the soldiers can easily return. Key terrain, terrain that can be advantageous to you if you take it, and advantageous to the enemy if they conquer it. Terrain of inevitable struggle, or critical terrain, any defensive enclave or strategic pass. Terrain of communication, a territory equally accessible to you and to others. Terrain of intersection, territory that is surrounded by 3 rival territories and is the first to provide free access to everyone. It is where the main communication routes converge, linking them together. Be the first to occupy it, and the people will have to side with you. If you obtain it, you are safe. If you lose it, you are in danger. Difficult terrain, when you penetrate deeply into foreign territory and leave behind many cities and towns. It is a terrain from which it is difficult to return. Unfavorable terrain, when you cross forested mountains, steep gorges, or other obstacles that are difficult to traverse. Enclosed or hemmed-in terrain, when the entrance is narrow and the exit is tortuous, so that a small enemy unit can attack you even if your troops are far more numerous. If you possess a great capacity for adaptation, you can traverse this territory. Death or desperate terrain, if you can only survive in a territory by fighting quickly, and if it is easy to die if you do not. Troops in death terrain are in the same situation as if they were in a sinking boat or a burning house. Therefore, do not fight in dispersive terrain, Do not stop in light terrain. Do not attack in a key terrain occupied by the enemy. Do not allow your troops to be divided in terrain of communication. In terrains of intersection, establish alliances. In difficult terrains, enter well provisioned. In unfavorable terrains, keep marching. In enclosed terrains, formulate plans and introduce surprise tactics. In death terrains, fight. In dispersive terrain, the soldiers can flee. Light terrain is when soldiers have penetrated enemy territory, but do not yet have their backs covered. Thus, their minds are not truly focused and they are not ready for battle. It is not advantageous to attack the enemy in key terrain. What is advantageous is to arrive there first. Terrain of communication must not be allowed to be cut off, so that you can utilize the supply routes. In terrains of intersection, you will be safe if you establish alliances. If you lose them, you will find yourself in danger. In difficult terrains, entering well-provisioned means gathering everything necessary to remain there for a long time. In unfavorable terrains, since you cannot entrench yourself, you must hasten to leave. In enclosed terrains, introduce surprising tactics. If troops fall into death terrain, everyone will fight spontaneously. For this is why it is said, place your troops in death terrain, and they will survive. Those who were once considered experts in the art of war were capable of making the enemy lose contact between their vanguard and their rearguard trust, between large and small units, reciprocal interest in the well-being of different ranks. Mutual support between rulers and ruled the cohesion of their soldiers and the consistency of their armies. These experts went into action when it was advantageous and held back otherwise. They introduced changes to confuse the enemy, attacking them here and there, terrifying them, and sowing confusion so that they were given no time to make plans. One might ask, how do we face numerous and well-organized enemy forces heading toward us? The answer is, first take away something they cherish, and then they will listen to you. Rapidity of action is the essential factor of the condition of a military force, taking advantage of the adversary's mistakes, moving along paths they do not expect, and attacking when they are not on guard. This means that to take advantage of the adversary's lack of preparation, vision, and caution, it is necessary to act with speed. If you hesitate, those mistakes will be of no use to you. In an invasion, as a general rule, the deeper the invaders penetrate into foreign territory, the stronger they become, to the point that the native government can no longer expel them. Choose fertile fields, and the troops will have enough to eat. Take care of their health and avoid exhaustion. Consolidate their energy, increase their strength. Let the movements of your troops and the preparation of your plans be unfathomable. Consolidate the most enthusiastic energy of your troops. Hoard your surplus forces. Keep your formations and plans secret, remaining unfathomable to the enemy, and wait for a vulnerable point to appear before advancing. Place your troops in a spot from which there is no escape, so that they must face death before they can flee. For when faced with the possibility of death, what are warriors not willing to do? They then give the very best of their strength. When they find themselves in grave danger, they lose their fear. When there is nowhere to go, they stand firm. When they are totally involved in a terrain, they cling to it. If they have no other option, they will fight to the end. For this reason, the soldiers are vigilant without having to be stimulated. They show up without having to be summoned to the ranks. They are courageous without the need for promises, and they can be trusted without the need for orders. This means that when combatants find themselves in danger of death, whatever their rank, they all share the same objective, and are therefore alert without needing to be stimulated. They possess goodwill spontaneously without needing to receive orders, and they can be naturally trusted without promises or the need for hierarchy. Prohibit omens to avoid doubts, and the soldiers will never abandon you. If your soldiers have no wealth, it is not because they disdain it. If they do not have greater longevity, it is not because they do not wish to live longer. The day the order to march is given, the soldiers weep. Thus, a masterfully prepared military operation must be like a swift snake that strikes back with its tail when attacked at its head, strikes back with its head when attacked at its tail, and strikes back with both head and tail when attacked in the middle. This image represents the method of a battle line that responds swiftly when attacked. A manual of 8 classic battle formations says, make the front the rearguard, make the rearguard the front, with 4 heads and 8 tails. Make the head be everywhere, and when the enemy strikes through the center, head and tail will rush to the rescue. One may ask if it is possible to make a military force act like a swift snake. The answer is yes. Even people who dislike each other, finding themselves in the same boat, will help one another in danger of capsizing. It is the force of the situation that makes this happen. Because of this, it is not enough to place trust in tied horses and locked wheels. Horses are tied to form a stable battle line, and wheels are locked so that the chariots cannot move. But even so, this is not secure enough, nor can it be relied upon. It is necessary to allow variations to the changes made, putting the soldiers in deadly situations so that they fight spontaneously and help one another side by side. This is the path to security and obtaining a certain victory. The best organization is to make courage express itself and keep it constant. Succeeding with both weak and hardy troops is based on the configuration of circumstances. If you obtain the advantage of the terrain, you can defeat adversaries even with light and weak troops. How much more would be possible if you had powerful and battle-hardened troops? What makes victory possible for both classes of troops is the circumstances of the terrain. Therefore, experts in military operations achieve the cooperation of the troops in such a way that leading a group is like leading a single individual who has but a single option. It behooves the general to be calm, reserved, just, and methodical. His plans are calm and absolutely secret, so that no one can discover them. His command is just and methodical, so no one dares to take him lightly. He can keep his soldiers without information and in complete ignorance of his plans. He changes his reactions and revises his plans so that no one can recognize them. He changes his campsite and moves along winding paths so that no one can anticipate him. You can win when no one can understand your intentions at any moment. A great man says, the principal deception valued in military operations is not directed only at the enemies, but begins with one's own troops to make them follow you without knowing where they are going. When a general sets a goal for his troops, it is like someone who climbs to a high place and then removes the ladder. When a general penetrates deep into enemy territory, he is testing all of his potential. He has his troops burn their ships and destroy their houses. Thus he drives them like a flock of sheep, and everyone is ignorant of where they are heading. It is incumbent upon generals to assemble the armies and place them in dangerous situations. They must also examine adaptations to different terrains, the advantages of concentrating or dispersing, and the patterns of human feelings and situations. When speaking of the advantages and disadvantages of concentration and dispersion, it means that the patterns of human behavior change according to the different types of terrain. In general, the common pattern of invaders is to unite when they are in the heart of enemy territory, but they tend to disperse when they are on the border fringes. When you leave your territory and cross the border in a military operation, you find yourself in isolated terrain. When it is accessible from all points, it is a terrain of communication. When you go deep, you are in difficult terrain. When you penetrate only a little, you are in light terrain. When impassable thickets lie behind you and narrow passages lie ahead, you are in enclosed terrain. When there is nowhere to go, it is death terrain. Thus, in dispersive terrain, I would unify the minds of the soldiers. In light terrain, I would keep them in contact. In key terrain, I would hasten to take it. In terrain of intersection, I would pay attention to defense. In terrain of communication, I would establish solid alliances. In difficult terrain, I would ensure continuous supplies. In unfavorable terrain, I would urge my troops to leave it quickly. In enclosed terrain, I would block the entrances. In death terrain, I would indicate to my troops that there is no chance of survival. For this is the psychology of soldiers, to resist when surrounded, to fight when it cannot be avoided, and to obey in extreme cases. Until soldiers are surrounded, they do not have the determination to resist the enemy to achieve victory. When they are desperate, they present a unified defense. Therefore, Those who ignore the enemy's plans cannot prepare alliances. Those who ignore the circumstances of the terrain cannot maneuver their forces. Those who do not use local guides cannot take advantage of the terrain. The military of an effective government must know all these factors. When the army of an effective government attacks a large territory, the people cannot unite. When its power surpasses its adversaries, it is impossible to form alliances. If you can find out the plans of your adversaries, take advantage of the terrain, and maneuver the enemy so that he finds himself defenseless. In this case, not even a large territory can assemble enough troops to stop you. Therefore, if you do not fight to obtain alliances, nor increase the power of any country, but extend your personal influence by threatening your adversaries, all of this makes the enemy's country and cities vulnerable. Bestow rewards that are not regulated and give unusual orders. Consider the advantage of granting unprecedented rewards. Observe how the enemy makes promises without taking established codes into account. Manage the troops as if they were a single person. Employ them in real tasks, but do not speak to them. Motivate them with rewards, but do not discuss the possible harms with them. Employ your soldiers only in combat without communicating your strategy to them. Let them know of the benefits that await them, but do not tell them about potential damages. If the truth leaks out, your strategy may collapse. If the soldiers begin to worry, they will become hesitant and fearful. Place them in a situation of possible extermination, and then they will fight to live. Put them in mortal danger, and then they will survive. When troops face dangers, they are capable of fighting to obtain victory. Thus, the task of a military operation is to pretend to accommodate the intentions of the enemy. If you focus totally on him, you can kill his general, even if you are miles away. This is called achieving the objective with skill. At first, you accommodate his intentions. Then, you kill his generals. This is skill in achieving the objective. Thus, the day war is declared. The borders are closed, safe conducts are broken, and the passage of emissaries is blocked. Affairs are decided rigorously from the moment planning and strategy begin at home or headquarters. The rigor of headquarters in the planning phase refers to maintaining secrecy. When the enemy offers opportunities, seize them immediately. Find out first what he intends, and then anticipate him. Maintain discipline and adapt to the enemy to determine the outcome of the war. Thus, at first you are like a maiden, and the enemy opens his gates. Then you are like a loose hair, and the enemy will not be able to expel you. Chapter 12 on the art of attacking by fire. There are 5 classes of attacks using fire: burning people, burning supplies, burning equipment, burning warehouses, and burning weapons. The use of fire must have a foundation and requires certain means. There are appropriate times to light fires, specifically when the weather is dry and windy. Normally, in attacks using fire, it is essential to follow the changes produced by it. When the fire is inside the enemy camp, prepare quickly from the outside. If the soldiers remain calm when the fire is broken out, wait and do not attack. When the fire reaches its peak, follow it if you can. If not, wait. In general, fire is used to sow confusion in the enemy so that you can attack them. When fire can be set in an open field, do not wait to do so in their interior. Do it when it is opportune. When the fire is fanned by the wind, do not attack in the direction against it. It is not effective to fight against the momentum of the fire, because in this case, the enemy will fight to the death. If the wind is blown during the day, it will subside at night. A gale will cease at dusk. A night wind will cease at dawn. Armies must know that there are variations of the 5 classes of attacks by fire and adapt to them in a rational manner. It is not enough to know how to attack others with fire. It is necessary to know how to prevent others from attacking you. Thus, the use of fire to support an attack means clarity. The use of water to support an attack means strength. Water can cut off communication, but it cannot sweep away. Water can be used to divide an enemy army so that their forces are disunited and yours are strengthened. Winning by fighting to carry out a victorious siege, without rewarding those who have earned merit, brings bad fortune and makes one deserve to be called a miser. That is why it is said that an enlightened government takes this into account, and a good military command rewards merit. Do not mobilize your troops when there are no advantages to be gained, nor act when there is nothing to win, nor fight when no danger exists. Weapons are instruments of ill omen, and war is a dangerous matter. It is indispensable to prevent a disastrous defeat, and therefore it is not worth mobilizing an army for insignificant reasons. Weapons should only be used when there is no other remedy. A government must not mobilize an army out of anger, and military leaders must not provoke war out of wrath. Act when it is beneficial, otherwise desist. Anger can turn into joy, and wrath can turn into pleasure, but a destroyed people cannot be brought back to life, and death cannot be turned back into life. Consequently, an enlightened government pays attention to all of this, and a good military command keeps it in mind. This is the way to keep the nation safe and to keep its army intact. Chapter 13, on Concord and Discord. A military operation means a great effort for the people, and war can last many years to obtain a single day's victory. Thus, failing to know the situation of the adversaries to save on expenditures for investigating and studying the opposition is extremely inhumane, and is not typical of a good military leader, a government advisor, or a victorious ruler. Therefore, what enables an intelligent government and a wise military command to defeat others and achieve extraordinary triumphs is essential information. Prior information cannot be obtained from ghosts or spirits, nor can it be had by analogy, nor discovered through calculations. It must be obtained from people who know the situation of the adversary. There are 5 classes of spies: the native spy, hired among the inhabitants of a locality; the internal spy, hired among enemy officials; the double agent, hired among enemy spies; the expendable spy, transmits false data to enemy spies; the floating spy returns to bring back their reports. Among the officials of the enemy regime are those with whom contact can be established, and who can be bribed to find out the situation of their country and discover any plans being hatched against you. They can also be used to create rifts and disharmony. Consequently, no one in the armed forces is treated with as much familiarity as spies, nor is anyone granted rewards as great as theirs. There is no matter more secret than espionage. If spies are not treated well, they can become renegades and work for the enemy. One cannot use spies without sagacity and knowledge. One cannot make use of spies without humanity and justice. One cannot obtain the truth from spies without subtlety. Indeed, it is a very delicate matter. Spies are useful everywhere. Every matter requires prior knowledge. If any matter of espionage is disclosed before the spy has reported, both the spy and the one who disclosed it must be eliminated. Whenever you want to attack an army, besiege a city, or attack a person, you must first know the identity of the defending generals, their allies, their visitors, their sentries, and their servants. Thus, have your spies find out everything about them. Whenever you are going to attack and fight, you must first know the talents of the enemy's servants, so you can face them according to their capacities. You must seek out enemy agents who have come to spy on you, bribe them, and induce them to cross over to your side, so you can use them as double agents. With the information obtained in this way, you can find native spies and internal spies to hire. With the information obtained from these, you can manufacture false information using expendable spies. With the information thus obtained, you can make the floating spies act according to the planned designs. It is essential for a ruler to know the 5 classes of espionage, and this knowledge depends on double agents. Thus, these must be well treated. Only a brilliant ruler or a wise general who can use the most intelligent people for espionage can be sure of victory. Espionage is essential to military operations, and armies depend on it to carry out their actions. It will not be advantageous for the army to act without knowing the enemy's situation, and knowing the enemy's situation is not possible without espionage.